This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Twitter, Steve, on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tapping birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go. I bet
You
him
do
at,
too?
I bet him at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
I love Brian Harmon at 3.5% this week.
What's up, guys? It's producer Cam here. ISN is now partnered with Shorty's Golf. Shorty's Golf is designed to provide kids with the perfect introduction to the game of golf by offering high-quality clubs and equipment specifically tailored to their need. They offer custom sizes for various age groups, ensuring that the kids have clubs that are tailored to their height and strength. They feature fun, vibrant colors and lightweight stand bags that are easily adjustable. Each set features real stainless steel clubs, high-quality materials, and sturdy construction, making them long-lasting while providing a real golf experience. So go check them out, golfshorties.com. Use ISN15 at checkout for $15 off your purchase.
All right, welcome in Inside Golf Podcast, Charles Schwab Challenge betting and DFS preview. But of course, it's Sunday morning. We're going to talk a little PGA as well. I'm recording this at 9 a.m. Pacific time, about 2 hours before the leaders. Scotty Scheffler being the leader. He's got a 3-stroke lead over Alex Noren. Tee off for their final round at the 2025 PGA Championship at Quail Hollow. And boy, it has been quite the week. Certainly quite the positive week for me from a betting and DFS standpoint, but also quite the exhausting week from a discourse standpoint as well. And I obviously have some thoughts on Quail Hollow and how far the pendulum may have swung in terms of the discourse about this major championship. We've got a fair amount of stuff to get to today for Colonial. Colonial's awesome. They just did a great Gil Hans restoration last year of the golf course. I don't know if folks remember watching it last year, but the greens were mega firm. And that's what happens on a golf course that has brand new greens. It takes time for those greens to settle in a little bit. And they start out a lot more bouncy before they get the wear and tear of years of members and professionals playing golf on them. So we'll talk quite a bit about Colonial in the second half of this podcast. I think it's a fun and interesting handicap and a great golf course, a great old school classical golf course that, with an awesome restoration by Gil Hans, certainly stands the test of time. I mean, it played as the 7th most difficult golf course on the PGA Tour last year. And much of that had to do with the fact that the greens were just so insanely firm. I mean, they were borderline, like they were kind of teetering that edge to the point where you were having players complain about how difficult it was to get balls to stop on those greens, particularly when you add in an element of unpredictable Bermuda rough. We do not have an overseed this week at Colonial, which means we get actual, real, unpredictable, sticky, splotchy Bermuda rough, which will be certainly a nice change of pace from the overly manicured Quail Hollow that we got this week. And I suppose we can start there with Quail. I want to say this. I mean, nothing about what we've seen this week at Quail Hollow should be a surprise to any listener of this podcast. For me, in terms of the scoring average and what I expected to happen, there are zero surprises. I mean, my scoring average right now, let's see what happens on Sunday. It seems like the pins are set up a little bit easier today to make it a touch more gettable in hopes that someone might be able to go out and shoot a 64, 65 and catch Scotty Scheffler today. I understand why they did that. I'm not totally sold and convinced on how effective it's going to be. Trust me, if it was anybody else that had Scotty Scheffler but me, I would come on this podcast this morning and talk about how completely over the major championship is, and there's no point in even playing today when you have a guy like Scotty Scheffler have a 3-stroke lead, and there isn't really a player on the leaderboard until you get down to Rahm and Bryson that would really scare me in terms of somebody that has a viable opportunity to go out and shoot a 64 or 65 and catch Scotty. But since it's me who has Scotty, and since I've had quite the difficult time predicting the winner of golf tournaments this year, he's got some golf to play today. Okay. I'm certainly not counting my chickens before they hatch. I think that it's not going to be easy for him today. There is going to be somebody that is sitting around 5, 6, 7 under par that's going to shoot a really good number. That might start out this round, I don't know, 3 or 4 under through 8. You know, we've had guys shoot 32s and 33s on the front nine early this morning all day. I mean, even some players that were playing like horrendous golf all week are going out there today and shooting under par. But before we talk a little bit more about Scotty Scheffler, let's wrap up. Let's put a bow on Quail. And I think the main problem that this week faced, and it was at a massive disadvantage from the start, and this was something that I struggled with all week in my content. And ultimately, eventually by Wednesday evening on the premium show, I was basically like, I have nothing more to say about Quail Hollow. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how many people that I talk to at the golf course. Doesn't matter how many members I text. Like, I know exactly what Quail Hollow is, and I don't need to. And if you're a listener of this podcast and a listener of my content, then you know exactly what Quail Hollow is too. And it's just about picking the right guys. And you know, it seems like the tournament is playing out, at least at the top, exactly how I was expecting it to, and certainly from a scoring average perspective. But I think the problem that a lot of people had with the lack of juice this week was what I tweeted about earlier in the week. And I hope that this is an inflection point for major venues going to regular tour stops. I just think major championships that are hosted at regular tour stops, and Quail certainly is in a little bit of a different category than a golf course like Pebble Beach. I mean, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of Pebble Beach as a major championship venue either. I don't think that Pebble Beach, as it's currently set up, needs to be a US Open venue. Now, if the ball gets rolled back and they change some of the mowing lines at Pebble Beach, then I still think Pebble Beach could be a remarkable US Open venue, the same way that it was a remarkable US Open venue in the 70s and 80s. But what's even working even further against Quail Hollow than a place like Pebble Beach is that the tour event at Quail Hollow is on this week every single year. So at least when you get a golf course like Pebble Beach, you're used to seeing Pebble Beach in February. So when you get it in June, the golf course at least looks a little bit different. It's at a different time of year. And for Quail this year, you got the exact same week of the year. So people that are used to watching a signature event at Quail Hollow every single year for the Wells Fargo, how do you separate this as a major championship? I mean, there are a couple setup changes, and I talked about those setup changes and how the golf course under a PGA setup would play typically harder than your average Wells Fargo played. But The scoring average, like I said, is going to be like between 0.125 and plus 0.15 this week. The average scoring average for a regular Wells Fargo is around 1 to 1.2. So the difference between a Wells Fargo Quail Hollow and a major championship Quail Hollow, and the golf courses look the same. The agronomy is the exact same. It's not like you're getting Quail Hollow in August when you have this non-overseeded Bermuda rough and it plays a lot hotter and firmer and faster. This time of year, you get that overseeded, soft cloud cover. And it's hard to find juice that way. Because in my opinion, so much of what makes major championship weeks great and unique and singular is the aspect of going to a golf course that we don't have mountains and mountains of data on. And not only did we have mountains and mountains of data on Quail Hollow, but it was presented by the PGA Championship in a very, very similar way to the way that it is presented as a PGA Tour golf course. And I think the other problem with Quail Hollow that is such a concerning trend in golf course architecture and golf course setup at the professional level is the Augustification of these golf courses. And we are at the point, Memorial Park does this. Quail Hollow certainly is the biggest offender of this. But in my personal opinion, and others may disagree with me on this, I don't think that we need any more golf courses to try and look like Augusta National. Okay. I think that Augusta National is perfect the way it is. It is a phenomenal golf course architecturally and aesthetically. And that look of the short, overseeded ryegrass, the short grass all around the greens, the way the bunkers are cut into a lot of those hills and mounds that surround the greens. Other golf courses don't need to try and copy this as much as it seems like they're doing. And I think that's why so many people look at a golf course like Quail Hollow and say to themselves, okay, we're putting lipstick on a pig here. This is extremely hollow. I mean, I was talking to my dad yesterday on the phone about this PGA, and he is like a classic CBS Sunday viewer of golf. I mean, he listens to my podcast and he sits down on the weekends and watch major championships, but it's not like he's grinding the PGA Tour every single week. And the first thing that he said to me was like, this looks exactly like Augusta National on television. And I think a lot of casual viewers, if you're not familiar with even watching the tour event at Quail Hollow, you're going to turn on your television this week and say, okay, this golf course is presented exactly like Augusta National. I mean, it looks exactly like Augusta National. And that's what happens in the design industry and honestly, in any industry, I suppose, where these trends come about and a trend hits and then everybody tries to copy it. And I am declaring this major at Quail Hollow. This needs to be the end of the Augustification aesthetically of golf courses. Okay. You do not need to try and look exactly like Augusta National anymore, especially if you're hosting a major championship. It would actually be a nice breath of fresh air if we got something a little more aesthetically different, a little bit more rugged. Like, how nice was it to watch golf at Pinehurst last year, which had kind of this more sand scraped, Australian-esque, rugged view. It wasn't perfectly manicured in the same way that Augusta is, where not a blade of grass is out of place. You actually had some variance when you missed a fairway at Pinehurst, and that was like one of the highest approval major championships than I've seen in recent history, right? How great is it to go overseas once a year and watch the Open Championship, which aesthetically looks and plays so much differently than the overly manicured venues that you see in the US. And I think with Quail Hollow this week, it wasn't just the fact that we are so used to seeing a tour event here at the same time every single year. It wasn't just the fact that the golf course was presented like the PGA Tour event and played very similar to the PGA Tour event and was on the same week every year as the PGA Tour event. But I just think these golf courses that try so hard to be Augusta National, and that's really all that Quail Hollow ever was, right? I mean, it is a golf course that has put millions and millions and millions of dollars into being this great, modern, perfect major championship venue. And it's just a golf course that wants to be loved, right? I mean, no golf course, maybe in the United States of America, tries harder to be loved and appreciated and respected than a golf course like Quail Hollow. And I don't think it lands for fans because educated golf fans, at least my listeners and the people that I talk golf with and interact with, they're a little bit more educated than that, where they don't need to see like a B- version of Augusta National as the second major championship of the year. In fact, they probably want a little bit of variety, and they want this major championship to feel like a major championship, especially if you're a diehard golf fan that is used to grinding the PGA Tour every week. It's so exciting to look forward to these weeks because it's new questions to a test, right? I mean, we are so used. I come on here every single week and talk about the PGA Tour event. And most weeks, I have a ton of data on the golf course. I know how the golf course is going to play. And my breakdowns, a lot of them don't change a whole lot from year to year. But when we get major championship venues, it's a completely new energy. It's a completely new podcast. I'm talking about different things. I'm not giving you a bunch of data. I'm talking about how I could think and look about the architecture of the golf course and figure out almost like a puzzle how the golf course is going to play. And that's the type of stuff that I love. That's what I think I'm best at and most talented at, and what gets me out of bed in the morning. And you didn't, and my bank account is certainly grateful for it, but you just didn't get any of that mystery this week at Quail Hollow that I think diehard golf fans really crave during major championship weeks. Now, I think the pendulum has completely swung a little bit too far in the criticisms of the golf course as a challenge. Okay. Like, Quail Hollow did provide a real test this week for professional golfers. Now, was that test more in line with a major championship or a very hard signature event? Probably a little bit closer to a very hard signature event than a major championship by most people's standards. I mean, to place it in context, like, we are going to get the scoring average that I expected, which is somewhere between 1.25 and plus 1.5. And so for context, I mean, the standard Wells Fargo plays about plus 0.1. And the PGA venues that we've seen over the last couple of years, once you take out the catastrophe at Valhalla, which is a major outlier, Oak Hill, Southern Hills, Bethpage, Kiowa, all those golf courses played between 2 strokes over par and 2.6 strokes over par. And Quail Hollow didn't get there. It played there for parts of the tournament. It played there for an afternoon here or there where the scoring average was plus 0.2. But the scoring average ended up being kind of like we expected, closer to 1.25 to plus 1.5, which is really a half a stroke to a full stroke below what we have seen at most PGA venues over the last 5 to 10 years. So from a pure statistical standpoint, it was about a half stroke to a stroke easier than the PGA championships that we've seen at Southern Hills, Oak Hill, Kiowa Island, and Bethpage. But it was a nice, big, healthy rebound from Valhalla. I mean, Valhalla was just a straight up birdie fest putting contest, and Quail Hollow, for better or worse, was not that. I mean, it did test these pros in a significant way. The combination of a very soft golf course with very soft fairways, but also very firm greens, I'm not sure if that's the version of pro golf that I want to watch in the future or want to watch every week, or we should be trying to emulate every single week at our major championships. But it certainly is a way to make professional golfers uncomfortable, right? Is when you have very firm greens, which Quail Hollow did this week. And this was the biggest advertisement that you could ever find for a sub-air system, because these greens got drenched all week. Okay, there was rain all week. And I came on here on the Wednesday night stream and I said the thing that I'm consistently hearing from members and people at the golf course is that while the golf course is extremely wet, the greens are actually still really firm. And you saw those big, firm bounces on the greens all week. And that was the biggest contributing factor for me for why I picked Scotty over Bryson and why I cored Tony Finau and Keegan Bradley, was that piece of information that I got on the firmness of the greens and the importance of apex height, right? And that really and it will come into play again at Colonial again, because Colonial is another golf course with very firm greens. But when we talk about golf courses with firm greens, that is the biggest advantage that Scotty Scheffler can have over a PGA Tour player, is a golf course with firm greens, because he has the best distance control in the game of golf right now. There is nobody better in golf at controlling his distances, understanding wind, and understanding where to land an iron shot than Scotty Scheffler. He's in a total league of his own in that category. And we finally saw it on approach when he was able to lift and separate from the field over the course of those final couple holes on Saturday. All of that advantage that Scotty Scheffler has on this golf course is because of his ability on firm greens. And that's what really defined Quail Hollow this week, is it was this golf course that had insanely soft fairways. And so carry distance ended up being this huge advantage. If you could cut, I mean, we saw it all week with Bryson, and I'll talk about Bryson in a second, because I still think that Bryson might win Oakmont, and I walked away incredibly impressed from what I saw with Bryson this week, even if he struggled down the last. I mean, I'm still not counting him out to win the golf tournament on Sunday. I have him in a lot of DFS lineups, and the optimal situation for me, and the optimal situation for me all week has essentially been Scotty winning the golf tournament and Bryson finishing top 5. That's what I called for all week and what I've been hoping for all week. And I still think that's very much in play this afternoon. But this combination of when you have a very soft golf course and firm greens, again, I'm not sure if it's my favorite style of golf to watch, but it gives pros problems. I mean, pros were sufficiently uncomfortable this week at Quail Hollow. And while it did not play as difficult as the average PGA Championship venue that we have seen the past couple of years outside of Valhalla, I still thought it tested these guys. I mean, I still thought the golf course was at minimum a very hard signature event. And it was, and we didn't expect it to be a plus 2.25 major or plus 2.5 major like a Beth Page or an Oak Hill or a Southern Hills. We didn't expect any of that. None of that is a surprise. But I thought that combination that they were able to find of how crazy firm they were still able to get these greens despite all of that rain. I mean, it got the scoring average that we were calling for this week, at least. So anyway, Bryson, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to save the Bryson Scotty talk that I wanted to have. I'll talk about it on the Monday DFS show with RB or on my recap pod with a guest later this week. There's still a lot of golf left. Okay. I don't need that bad juju. I don't need myself jinxing myself. We've got 18 big holes of golf to play this afternoon. And judging by the way my season has been going in terms of picking the winner of a golf tournament, I'm not putting any of that stuff into the universe. I'm going to save some thoughts on Scotty and Bryson and the pendulum this week for another recap pod. I'll have other opportunities. So let's use the time to talk about Colonial because, you know, there's typically a lazy week after a major championship, and there shouldn't be, because I think there's tremendous opportunity on Colonial. I'm certainly flying high with the most confidence that I have had all season after these past 2 weeks with Truist and Quail Hollow. So let's dive right into Colonial, talk a little bit about that golf course and some early leans. Although, of course, the majority of my early leans are not going to be totally formulated yet until we get all of the final numbers from Quail Hollow this week. Although, if somebody plays poorly at Quail Hollow, I wouldn't put a tremendous amount of stock into that in terms of Colonial is just a very different golf course. I mean, the only real thing that these two golf courses have in common is the firmness of the putting surfaces, right? In terms of off the tee, Colonial is a much tighter, more claustrophobic, less than driver golf course. It is not a bomber friendly, bombs away golf course by any means. In fact, I think like Harbor Town, it is one of the best golf courses on tour at effectively taking the driver out of a player's hands. Now, I do think Colonial, just like any other golf course on the PGA Tour in 2025, is continuing to shift towards more driver heavy. And we saw that statistically last year. I mean, the Gil Hans restoration opened up a lot of the driving corridors. He took out a bunch of trees. It doesn't feel as claustrophobic and tight. And we saw the driver usage percentage last year go from 57% to 65% in that first year of the restoration, which 65% is still quite low, right? A golf course like Quail Hollow is going to hover closer to the high 70s. So if you have a golf course with a driver usage percentage in the mid to low 60s, that still, by modern PGA Tour standards, is a club down, less than driver golf course. But last year, overall off the tee play, and we saw some bombers be able to cut the corner on some holes and gain a bit of an advantage with their driving. Last year, in that first year of the restoration, off the tee play was more important at Colonial than we have seen in years past, both from a distance and accuracy perspective. So I will talk about it in my breakdown a little bit further on in the pod, how I actually do believe that there should be at least a standard weight this week on off the tee play. I prefer accuracy over distance at this golf course. Accuracy always features a higher correlation than distance at this golf course, including in that first year of the restoration last year. The only difference that we saw last year is that we saw overall off the tee play increase, as well as a little bit of distance as well, but still not quite to the level that we see for accuracy. So Colonial this week, Scotty Scheffler is the headliner. And man, if you're asking me if Colonial is one of the golf courses that is a better fit for Scotty Scheffler, relatively speaking, to some of the other golf courses that he's going to see this year, like just on paper, at least, I don't think that he's going to win Colonial by 10 strokes, but at least on paper, Colonial is a much better golf course for Scotty Scheffler, the way that he's hitting his irons right now, than TPC Craig Ranch was. Okay. So if Scotty blew out a similar field at TPC Craig Ranch in Texas by 10 strokes on a golf course that wasn't as good of a fit for him as Colonial will be, you can imagine how I feel about Scotty this week at Colonial. I am typically not a without Scotty better. But if you look at the last time that Scotty Scheffler was in a similar field in Texas, and now you apply that to a golf course that is even a better fit for his game, I mean, you think about what Scotty is the best at. We talked about it earlier on this podcast. Iron play. He's the best iron player in the world. He's got the best distance control in the world. And the name of the game at Colonial, all Colonial really is the ability to control short irons out of unpredictable Bermuda rough, and hit greens, and get the ball to within 5 to 15 feet, with small targets, firm greens out of unpredictable Bermuda rough. So that short iron play, and Scotty is the number one player in the field in proximity from 100 to 200 yards. This is one of the lowest long iron golf courses on the PGA Tour. It's a par 70 with a bunch of medium length par fours. Less than 20% of all approach shots come from over 200 yards. And Scotty is the best player in this field from 100 to 200 yards. You firm up those greens and increase the challenge on approach. And Colonial statistically is one of the most difficult ball striking golf courses on tour in terms of the ability to gain strokes off the tee and gain approach. Colonial ranks top 10 in both of those. It's a very difficult ball striking test, particularly when it gets firm and windy. All of those things are a good thing for Mr. Scotty Scheffler, unfortunately, this week as well. So the golf course itself, Colonial Country Club, it was designed in 1936 by John Bredemoose and Perry Maxwell, the great Perry Maxwell, also of Prairie Dunes and Southern Hills, with a Gil Hans and Jim Wagner restoration in 2023. We saw that restoration last year. It was the first year of that restoration at Colonial. Much needed, made the golf course much better, in my opinion. It's in Fort Worth, Texas, par 70, 7,289 yards. Tough Bermuda grass fairways measuring 25 to 30 yards, quite narrow fairways. Greens are 007 XL bent grass measuring 5,000 square feet on average. And the rough is tough Bermuda grass measuring 2.5 inches. No overseed this week. No overseed this week. And what do you know? A higher missed fairway penalty. Shout out Colonial. Shout out the grounds crew at Colonial for not overseeding their golf course. We are going to see what happens when professional golfers miss a fairway. It's not good in golf to miss a fairway. Okay. And we are finally going to see that and accuracy actually be tested this week, because this Bermuda rough is not overseeded. And what do you know? Statistically, the missed fairway penalty last year, I'll pull it up right now. I believe it ranked in the top 15 in missed fairway penalty. Yep. Third out of 43 golf courses in strokes gained off the tee difficulty last year. 13th out of 43 golf courses in missed fairway penalty. 7th, what do you know? top 7 on the PGA Tour in rough penalty. Bet you don't have too many overseeded golf courses ahead of it in rough penalty because of that unpredictability and challenge of splotchy, non-overseeded Bermuda rough, 14th out of 43 golf courses in non-rough penalty. So what do you know? Colonial does a better job of testing accuracy off the tee than most golf courses on the PGA Tour. Now, you do not have to be the best driver of the golf ball in the world to succeed at Colonial. In fact, I would much rather have you be an awesome short to middle iron player than I would have you be an accurate driver, because the golf course is still short enough where you could club down off the tee to find your right spots in the fairway. And that's why distance still helps to a certain extent here. But this golf course actually tests accuracy in ways that we very rarely see on the PGA Tour anymore. And it's all because of that non-overseeded Bermuda rough. So the restoration, it was the first year last year that we saw the restoration. I can't believe they got it done so quickly. And it probably, if we're being honest, was barely ready to host a PGA Tour event last year. I mean, those greens were rock hard. They were borderline in terms of being ready to host professional golfers. This year, the greens will have taken another year to settle. They've sat. They'll be a little bit softer and more receptive, and will have settled into the ground a little bit more once you have a full year of members playing on them. And I do not think that it will be quite as difficult to hit greens or as difficult of the test that we saw at Colonial last year. Last year, Colonial played as it played as the 7th most difficult golf course on the PGA Tour, despite being the 11th shortest course on tour. And even before the restoration, I mean, the golf course always plays hard. And that's generally because the greens are very small. The golf course usually gets baked out, and it's usually quite windy this time of year in Texas. And I was looking at the weather that we have in store for us this year. And, it looks like it's going to be the Colonial that we are used to seeing, which is it always ranks in the top 15 in scoring difficulty. I mean, this is by no means an easy wedge fest. This is about as hard of a golf course as it gets for being so short and a wedge fest. I mean, it is on paper, in my opinion, it's generally a golf course that gets firmer and windier than Harbor Town. But those are the comps that you want to be looking at this week: is Harbor Town, Sedgefield, Waialae. All of those golf courses are less than driver golf courses that test accuracy to a certain extent and actually can get somewhat firm and have mid-scoring to easy scoring conditions. Colonial is certainly the hardest of that group. But all those, because not all short golf courses are created equal. Not all club down golf courses are created equal. Like, for example, there's nuances here involved. And I know that's why you come and listen to the podcast, is to explain these nuances. But like, for example, a golf course like Pebble Beach doesn't test off the tee performance really at all. I mean, that is a pure wedges and putting second shot golf course where what you do off the tee is extremely devalued. Colonial, for example, Sedgefield, for example, those are still golf courses where the number one thing that you want to be good at is controlling short irons, but they also do test accuracy off the tee. Right. And again, for me, number one, if you're asking me, pick one skill this week that I care about the most, it is a player's ability to control their short irons into small, firm targets. But this is also a golf course where finding the fairway versus being in the Bermuda rough makes a real difference. Same thing at Sedgefield, because Sedgefield doesn't feature overseeded rough either. And I think the best 3 comps that you can have this week are Harbortown, Sedgefield, and Waialae, because again, those are all 3 golf courses where number 1, approach play, wedge play is the name of the game, but they actually do test accuracy off the tee as well. Another great golf course in terms of architecturally, this part of the country, and agronomically as well, it has quite similar agronomy as well, is Southern Hills. And Southern Hills is that same Perry Maxwell golf course with a Gil Hans and Jim Wagner restoration in a very similar part of the country with very similar scoring conditions as well. So actually, if you, I found this interesting, but if you take, because I think it's a good, really good golf course for comp course performance, but if you take those 3 golf courses plus Southern Hills in terms of Waialae, Sedgefield, Harbortown, and Southern Hills, the players that have performed the best in this field on those golf courses are number 1, Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk has like a sneaky, really high finish at Southern Hills as well. Number 2, Tommy Fleetwood, who sneakily finished 5th at Southern Hills as well. And Tommy's been unbelievable at the Heritage. Number 3, JT Poston. Shout out Tom and Marty's. If we are talking, is this a JT Poston golf course or not? This most certainly is a JT Poston golf course, although JT Poston might be course proof at this point because he's playing quite well at Quail Hollow, which is definitively not a JT Poston golf course or the type of golf course that I expected him to play well at. But I hope JT Poston has a quiet Sunday for you. And I expect him to. Like, I don't think JT Poston is going to go and threaten. I'll be the first to admit if I'm wrong, but I don't think JT Poston is going to go out there on Sunday at Quail and threaten to win the PGA Championship from Scotty Scheffler. I would be hoping for a very slow Sunday from JT Poston because you want good odds on him this week. It's a very, very good golf course for Poston. Number 4 is Matt Kuchar. I don't really play Matt Kuchar anymore. I just think he's over the hill, but he's had a lot of success on these golf courses. Number 5, Scotty Scheffler. Shocking. What do you know? Although he didn't play well at Southern Hills, but he does have 3 top 3 finishes already at Colonial. And it just almost feels etched in stone at this point that Scotty Scheffler is going to win Colonial at some point in his career. Number 6, Eric Cole. He's actually having a decent PGA Championship week. Number 7, Brian Harman. Number 8, Rio Hitsetsune, another player that be careful for Rio on the chart this week because he's been having a pretty good Quail Hollow as well. And he's played quite well before on these. Oh, another one that I would add into that mix is Valspar too. I should have mentioned Valspar as well because Valspar, they did overseed Valspar this year, but it still has thick enough rough that you get a missed fairway penalty and accuracy is tested. The biggest difference between Valspar and Colonial is probably that you get a lot more long irons at Valspar, but Valspar is a very claustrophobic golf course off the tee as well. And there is a lot of crossover in the questions and the style of golf that is being asked at both of those golf courses. So I would add Valspar into the mix as well as those 4. I should have mentioned that off the top because Valspar is included in this ranking as well. Number 9, Jordan Spieth. Number 10, Ben Griffin. And then you get into guys like Cam Davis, surprisingly, Mac Meisner, Adam Svensson, Daniel Berger, who I would imagine to be most tipped this week, Siwoo Kim, although Siwoo Kim has been oddly terrible at Colonial. And I have a difficult time explaining that. But essentially, the number one thing that you need here is the ability to control short irons and get them to stop on small, firm targets. This is far more, in my opinion, of a spike approach golf course than it is a spike putting golf course. My weight on putting this week is pretty standard. But once you get on the greens, even in that first year of the restoration where Gil Hans really improved the greens, it's not as difficult of a putting golf course as it is an off the tee or approach golf course. Like it ranked 27 out of 43 courses in strokes gained putting difficulty, and it ranked close to the bottom in around the green difficulty as well. So for me, like I am way, way heavy this week, more so on short iron approach play and accuracy off the tee than I am on putting and short game. Short game, I have about a standard weight on just because the greens and regulation percentage is low. So when you have a greens and regulation percentage under 60%, you always have to be weighing short game to a certain extent just because of volume. But it's not a particularly difficult golf course around the greens. Like you have Emiliano Grillo winning here 2 years ago. He is historically has one of the worst short games on the PGA Tour. Like that is not the skill that you really need here. Like you really want to be an awesome short iron player inside 200 yards, and accuracy off the tee as kind of a secondary skill, because you can gain such an advantage if you're able to drive the ball in the fairway consistently versus having to hit out of that Bermuda rough. And then number 3, I would put putt. I mean, realistically, number 3, I would put performance on these comp courses and these other similar golf courses. And course history here is like middle of the pack to high. It doesn't have one of the highest course histories on the PGA Tour. Like it's not as correlated as like Waialae, for example, or even TPC San Antonio. It's definitely above average in course history correlation though. So I want players to have course history here. I want them to have played the golf course before. There's certainly enough nuance and strategy off the tee where experience at this golf course helps. And I would ding a player if it's their first time seeing the golf course before, but I wouldn't cross them out in red ink if they've never seen the golf course before. So that's really it for me on Colonial. I feel great about my breakdown. I feel like the renovation, I really understand what they have been trying to do with the restoration of this golf course. And I think it's created a lot more challenge on approach. I mean, these greens are still going to be firm. There's a lot more subtle undulations and contouring to the greens, and they've also opened up the driving corridors a little bit more here, where you can actually gain a real advantage off the tee here if you are long and straight. Okay, so you know what? Let's take a very short break, and then we will finish up with the model. Okay, we are back. So number 1, Scotty Scheffler, Grand Canyon size gap. I have already spoken at length this podcast about why this is a great golf course for Scotty Scheffler. And it seems like the way that he's playing right now, the best aspect of his game is his distance control with his irons. That is a skill that is going to be accentuated at Colonial. So if you are one for the without Scotty market, I don't know if that's the route that I'm going to choose this week. But I'm not going to fault you if that's the route that you choose to go down. It seems like from a DFS perspective, I would consider going Lockingham at this golf course. It is hard to envision a universe where he does not see a sizable advantage on the field based on his ability to hit greens in regulation and control his short irons at a more effective clip than any other player in the field. If we are talking about the players that might be able to come close to Scotty Scheffler in their approach play, it would be these next couple of guys. It would be Tommy Fleetwood, It's a perfect golf course for Tommy Fleetwood, although his performance at Quail Hollow has been quite disappointing. Number 3, Daniel Berger, who I would expect to be most tipped this week. I mean, I have been on Daniel Berger pretty much every week this season, particularly at golf courses like these. You know, I was on him at Truist and Harbortown, which are both more less than driver, short iron approach play golf courses. And Daniel Berger is absolutely one of the best wedge players in this field. He's got a former win at Colonial. So what's not to like about Daniel Berger? I expect him to be one of the most popular bets on the board. And unlike the Bryson Zag this week, I would be less inclined to zag from a popular Berger, because Berger has been my guy. Berger has been a guy that I've bet pretty much every year this week outside of at Quail Hollow. And I think Colonial is a perfect golf course fit for him. It seems like he's having kind of a middling week at Quail Hollow. I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I did not think that Quail Hollow was a great golf course for Daniel Berger whatsoever. Number 4, Aaron Rai. Another one of my guys, another guy that I believe I was on at Colonial last year, and I think he disappointed with like a T32. I might go right back to the Aaron Rai train this week. I mean, I could not think of a better golf course for Aaron Rai's skill set of great short iron approach play and accuracy off the tee. I was on Aaron Rai when he won at a golf course like Sedgefield. I think this golf course is very similar to Sedgefield in many ways. So, you know, Daniel Berger and Aaron Rai feel like kind of the most logical early leans for me from a course fit standpoint. I don't think I'm going to be surprising too many people there. Number 5, Brian Harman. It's a great golf course for Brian Harman, who's playing sneaky good golf. He's very accurate off the tee. He's a very good wedge player. He's already won this year in Texas. I don't think he's probably going to win again this soon, but from a course fit standpoint, it's hard to do better than Brian Harman here. 6, Siwoo Kim. 7, my guy, Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley made the cut for me. It was a big made cut for me at Quail Hollow, but he has not done much over the weekend. Again, I wouldn't hold too much of his performance at Quail Hollow over the weekend against him. That was always going to be a bit of an uphill battle. I'm glad that he at least just made the cut. This is a golf course more so that Bud can play offense, and Bud is always going to be playing a little bit of defense at a golf course like Quail Hollow because it's so distance off the tee focused and long iron intensive, whereas Colonial is a much smaller ballpark. You know, Bud Cauley's very accurate off the tee. He's a great putter from 5 to 15 feet. He's a much better short iron player than he is a long iron player. That's why he's played well this year at golf courses like Valspar. And if Bud Cauley can play well at a golf course like Valspar, he can certainly play well at Colonial. Would highly consider going back to him here. 8, Lucas Glover, great Glover golf course. 9, Rio Hizatsune. I think he'll be a popular bet as well. Hizatsune makes loads of sense. 10, Rico Hoey. 11, Hideki Matsuyama. 12, Davis Thompson. 13, JT Poston. 14, Ben Griffin. 15, Kevin Yu. Big made cut for me at the PGA from Kevin Yu. 16, Keith Mitchell. I think it's an intriguing bounce back spot for Keith Mitchell, although I don't think it's the best golf course for him. 17, Maverick McNeely, who I would expect to garner some popularity as well. Good Maverick McNeely golf course. Although I like Maverick McNeely a little bit more when it's a spike putting golf course than it is a spike approach golf course. And I don't know if I trust McNeely's iron play enough to go out and win this golf tournament. He's also not like the most accurate player off the tee. He doesn't hit a ton of fairways, certainly not at the rate of a player like Berger, Rai, Harman, or Siwoo Kim, or Lucas Glover, or Rio Hizatsune. All those guys just pound fairways. Maverick McNeely doesn't do that as much. 18, Tom Kim. 19, JJ Spawn. 20, Emiliano Grillo. I don't think Emiliano Grillo is going to win Colonial in 2 out of 3 years, but I think Grillo is going to play great this week. He's a great course fit for obvious reasons. I think it's been a tough 2025 for Grillo, but he's starting to play a lot better golf down the stretch. Or at least the last couple of weeks, he's got a top 20 finish that he's coming off of at Myrtle Beach. And I don't mind one bit some of these guys that either missed the cut at Colonial, or excuse me, missed the cut at Quail Hollow, like Spieth is a very interesting one to me this week. I will be honest. I think this version of Jordan Spieth, and I bet Jordan Spieth in Texas in a bad field at the Byron Nelson. And I have to say, I know that Jordan Spieth has had a fair amount of success at Colonial in the past, and I still think he'll play great this week. I don't think I'm going to bet Jordan Spieth because I don't think that this version of Jordan Spieth is better suited for a golf course like Colonial than he is a golf course like TPC Craig Ranch. Like if I think about what Jordan Spieth is doing great right now, he's driving the ball great. He's starting to putt a lot better, and he's starting to chip a lot better. The iron play with Spieth is still very shaky. It comes and goes. He's had some good iron performances this year and a lot of really bad ones. Like his irons completely sunk the ship for him at the Truist. He didn't have a good iron week at Quail Hollow either. So I think with Spieth, the thing that would keep me off him as an outright bet, despite his course history at Colonial and despite the fact that he always plays well in Texas and will be sleeping in his own bed, I still think because of all of that Texas stuff, Spieth is going to be like 20, maybe 25 to 1 this week. And honestly, if Spieth gets to like 28 to 1, 30 to 1, then I think he certainly warrants consideration because from a talent perspective, there's just not that many other super talented players in the field. But I don't think this version of Jordan Spieth is better suited for a golf course like Colonial than he was a golf course like TPC Craig Ranch, which was just bombs away, more of a driver putter, versus this golf course is like a pure approach golf course. So for me, my early leans would probably be Berger, Rye, Bud Cauley. I don't mind Poston here. I don't mind Glover and Hizatsune here. Siwoo Kim should play great on this golf course, but just hasn't for whatever reason. I may fade the course history and just go with the more traditional course fit. And Siwoo Kim should play great at this golf course, but I think it would be maybe the without, a Berger, Rye, Cauley in the without Scheffler market this week. Kind of boring, kind of just riding the course fits, but we love the course fits. The course fits played beautifully for us this week at Quail Hollow, and hopefully we can close it out this afternoon and start running downhill with some positive momentum. I came on this podcast 2 weeks ago at the Truist and was just struggling. Like I felt like I was putting in so much effort into the process and getting the golf course right. But in terms of like predicting the top of the leaderboard, it just wasn't happening for me. So pending absolute disaster from the greatest player, the best player in the world right now, hopefully we can get some of that positive momentum in the outright market and start running downhill for a huge, huge summer. So best of luck with your bets this week at Quail Hollow this afternoon. Enjoy the golf this afternoon. I certainly will have a lot to sweat, and we will see you back on this podcast feed later this week. Cheers.